would have been great if we can do this in person, but this will suffice for now.
And let me introduce you really quick.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
All right, so we already have Vijay Balan, who's the director of scale growth for business platforms at Facebook. Vijay Balan leads publisher growth at Facebook Audience Network. In his capacity, he's responsible for driving global publisher acquisition for all Facebook publisher solutions. He's also responsible for all ad tech partnerships globally for Facebook, which also drives supply growth Audience Network. He previously ran global business development for enterprise market customers at Facebook. He came to Facebook as a part of the acquisition of LiveRail as Senior Vice President of Global Operations and Service at LiveRail. He was responsible for global customer operations. As a pre-revenue employee at LiveRail, he was vital in setting strategy, product, customer, and pricing, responsible for the build-out of the operational structure of the business, which contributed to the exponential growth in revenue and customers in years to come, eventually drive to profitability, culminating in successful acquisition by Facebook. All right, without further delay, off to you, Vijay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Just to add to the intro, I got a little bit of an overview of what the team has been speaking about for the last few hours from Chris, and just to set a little bit more context. In addition to, I've gone through a couple of startups, worked at large companies through the acquisition of those startups, so I've got a good mix of experiences, and I have the luxury now of being on the boards of a few startups. I've invested in a few, largely to keep myself somewhat tethered to the startup space so I can get it out of my system. And through that process, I actually learned a lot about how companies, large and small, think about digital transformation. Topics like agile leadership can seem somewhat academic until you actually see it in practice. And I've had the opportunity to see some of that. And my hope is that I can share some of that with you. And this is while it is still on Zoom, this is very much a two-way conversation. Feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me at any point. My hope is that I learn as much from you as you learn from me in this process. So this is not a one-way street for sure. Cool. So here's how we're going to spend our time. We're going to start with somewhat of a fun exercise. I like to call it dark comedy because it seems funny, but it's really about you and your companies. And so as you go through the questions, you'll realize that all of us, all of our companies, and all of us humans in organizations tend to do some of these things, which are, when you see it listed out on a piece of paper, seems completely ridiculous, but nevertheless, we still engage in some of these behaviors. And the reason I do this is because with a group like this, where you've got senior executives, the most important thing to realize is this is the group that can effect change. You can actually do something different. And my goal is to try and highlight some of that through the course of the interactive survey, and then ultimately, through the course of my talk with you guys. So if you can fire up your browsers, I'm going to throw this up so you can see this code on my screen. Let me know if you can see there we go. So you go to menti.com and you enter in that code 9702663. Is anyone not in Menti at this point? If you're having trouble, just unmute and let me know. I'll try and troubleshoot. Okay.
I'm just connecting through my phone, so I'm trying to connect it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's wait for a few more seconds here. All right. There we go. I'm gonna stop the sharing of this and start sharing my results screen, so you can actually see the results as you populate, as you start to vote. So these are questions, and the way that I would love for you to think about the responses here is it's either yourself or someone on your team, or behaviors that you've seen at the company that you work at. It could be other companies or other meetings or other groups of people that you work with. And if it is yourself, this is by no means meant to judge you. It's simply meant to illustrate a point about human behavior. So don't feel compelled. You can respond for a friend if that's easier. Okay, we've got about 6 responses. I think we have a few more people on. So let's try and give up to kind of 8 to 10 for each of these questions, and then we'll move on. Okay, so there are instances where long speeches are made. This one is by far my favorite because I tend to do this quite a bit. I try and catch myself in the middle of that. All right, moving to the next one. Insist on doing everything through the right channels. Never permit shortcuts. We've got one rebel who loves taking shortcuts. That's great. Okay, we're at about 7. You don't have to spend too much time thinking about this. This is, when you're answering these questions, don't forget to have a good laugh. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is very good. I'm very excited about this group. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, just a couple more.
Sorry.
This is great. This group has got a lot of diverse experience and opinions here, which is very informative. Very cool. One more here. This might be the last one, if I'm not mistaken.
What's the meaning of contrive?
Just make it up. Make up as many interruptions as you can. Invent things to do. Drink more Turkish coffee.
This is a funny question.
Of course, it will be never.
Does Zoom count here? Because
Right.
I was thinking about it.
Definitely does. Definitely does. But Zoom, unfortunately, is doing a pretty good job.
You're just not good at complaining, Vijay.
Right. Yes, we all know someone like this in our lives. Clemson, looks like you wanted to say something there.
No, Vijay, you found my leadership challenge. Thank you.
I was answering
and
for Clemson.
more than a few of us have much of this in common. So that's the end of this. But you know, I hope you guys were all on mute laughing. But I kind of do this. I do this with a number of groups, and the good news is that there's very few. I believe there was literally just one response for one of the questions that had someone select all the time, and for the most of it, we were distributed across the left-hand side, which is a sign of a relatively healthy organization. It's also a sign of good leaders, because this is the kind of behavior that is very easy in an organization to grow. And if it's not weeded out promptly by leaders, it tends to become the norm behavior. So people believe that it's okay to relitigate decisions. It is okay to complain and not deliver results. And if leadership does nothing, that becomes a norm. That becomes how you do business. So it's great to see that we're all aware and we all agree that it happens sometimes, but we generally as a group tend to guard against these things. So let me jump really quickly to my slideshow here, and we'll kind of come back to some of these discussions and conversations through the presentation, and I'll obviously share all this back with you guys. But let's dive in here. So I'm going to spend, I mean, the topic is agile leadership, but really in some ways it's a misnomer. Agile leadership is really a combination of so many different things, and it's not a single skill or a single muscle. It is really a multidisciplinary kind of mindset, if you will. And agility is defined, and I picked this up from the Oxford Dictionary, and I'm sure it's pretty much the same at other places, but the way it's defined is it's an adjective, it's not a noun, it's not a thing that you have, it is something that you do. It is a describer of your actions. And there are three words here in this description that really come to mind to me, which is quickly, easily, and in an intelligent way. And we're going to try and explore these three concepts to try and make it a little bit more tangible for this group. Like what does in leadership, in making business decisions, what does moving quickly mean? What does making it easy mean? And how do you do it in a smart way? And I'll try and kind of explain some of these concepts with case studies of other places where I've seen this work, my own experience. But I would love for this group to also chime in, especially if you've seen these in action at the places you work at, or more interestingly, if you disagree with me, so we can explore those concepts a bit further. So we're gonna play a quick game. And feel free to unmute, and this might get a little unruly because we're on Zoom, but don't hesitate. Go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. But we're gonna just get a sense for the layout of the ecosystem that we all live in. So the incumbents for, let's say, the banking and payments industry are obviously the handful of large banks that are present in every country. Has got a limited number of very large banks that take up a vast majority of the industry. Who do you think are some of the challengers in the banking and payment space? And people that are coming in and disrupting these large banks.
For banks, and maybe digital currency.
Digital currency, I heard. Yep.
Like Bitcoin and Libra and so on.
Yep.
Fintechs.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Depending on where you live, you've got, in the US, PayPal and Venmo are really huge. If you're in Asia, you can't do pretty much anything without having a WeChat account, as an example. So these are banks, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about why later. But let's keep moving through this. So this is for the ladies in the room. Who do you think are some of the challengers to incumbents like Sephora? For those of you that may not know, Sephora is a really large cosmetics retail. They have a store. They have storefronts all over the U.S. and internationally as well, I presume. And they also have a relatively slick online offering. The men want to answer this. Go for it.
You need a name of a brand which is competitor with Sephora, or you need a new challenge that have a risk for Sephora to end their business?
But there are a few challengers already. If you can name one of them, that's great. But if you think of there being an idea that has not yet happened or you wish was there, that's okay too.
I'm not aware of something that can compete with cosmetics unless it's natural materials.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I guess there is some applications that you can use artificial intelligence to see what suits the female or the lady, and it recommends instantly what you should use. I guess, as far as I know, I'm not into that kind of business. Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of augmented reality that's happening in the space. There's a company that I really love. It's called Birchbox, and I actually found out about it when I saw the box on my wife's dresser one day, and I was really curious about it. But the really interesting thing here, and it's probably worth exploring a little bit, is Birchbox basically competes as a in-the-box retailer. Their offering is you pay them $10 a month, and what you get in return each month is a bunch of samples of cosmetics that are suited to your skin color and skin type and your needs. So it's very personalized. And that was really interesting to me because it felt like, why would I want to pay money to get samples? Can't I just go to Sephora and just get them for free? Because like every cosmetic store offers you free samples. And this is what my wife told me, which really stuck, which is when you walk into a Sephora, the people in the store, they are not incentivized to hand out samples. They're looking to sell products. And here's an interesting survey that I found. 92%, so 9 out of 10 women buy new cosmetic brands after they've had a chance to try it out. I mean, when I say it, it makes absolute sense. Of course, when you're putting something on your face or your body, you want to try it out and make sure it's the right one for you. But the incumbent like Sephora is actually not incentivized to hand out samples. And so, you kind of walk in, and if you're there for samples, you're kind of the person who are like, oh my God, here she is again for free samples one more time. That's the attitude that you're faced with. And what Birchbox did is turned that whole thing upside down. And they said, if 9 out of 10 women want to try out samples, let's give them samples. They changed the incentive structure so that now women in the comfort of their home can try out new products. And guess what? They sell 6 out of 10 products that they ship to you have repeat buyers. So people try the products, they like it, and they buy more of it, and they buy it through Birchbox, not through Sephora, because they feel a sense of connection. They feel that they've been provided a service in a respectful way through this, through this offering, and they get discounts, and that's really their business model. We'll come back to this concept of user centricity a little bit later, but this one's easy. Video. In the US, there used to be a company, I'm really dating myself here, it's called Blockbuster.
Netflix.
That's right, Netflix. This is for everybody in the room here. Telecom operators, who do you guys compete against? Who's disrupting you guys?
Google Fi.
Yep. Google Fi. Did I hear Google Fi?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. I got to add that to my slide.
Yes, I know it.
Awesome. Automotive, Ford and Toyota.
Tesla.
I threw Uber in that category because I think we're in this kind of generational shift from car ownership to on-demand ridership. A lot of people feel less compelled to pay thousands of dollars up front for a car, pay for insurance. They'd rather pay $7 or $8 and just get to where they're going. This one is similar to the cosmetics one. It's for the men in the room. Gillette. If you shave, it is a very popular brand of shaving blades. Any challengers that come to mind?
Machines like Brown and something like this for chin.
Yep. So there's a lot of alternatives, but what Dollar Shave Club really did is address this problem in this very easy way. What they found is, for most men, and certainly for men like myself, I'm blessed because my wife buys the blades for me. So, she always seems to know when I'm going to run out and it's there. But if I was by myself, I probably would wake up one morning, open up my drawer and find that I'm out of blades. And Dollar Shave Club basically solved this problem. They just ship you, blades on a subscription. I mean, seems like a very basic concept, but they were able to take market share from Gillette. They got 13% of the market before, wait for it, they were acquired by Gillette.
What did they do? And got it.
They basically ship you blades once a month. That's it. It's a subscription plan. So every month you get blades at your door, and you don't have to go to the store to buy them. You don't have to remember if you're going to need them. You can pick how many blades you want, and it just shows up. So it's a subscription program. And this might seem obvious now, but when they started 10 years ago, it was not the thing you did.
So they did their own blades and delivered it.
Correct. And the blade on average, a Gillette blade is about $4, $3 to $4. The Dollar Shave Club, as advertised, is $1 for a blade. All right, so we kind of spoke about, oops, wrong button here. So as we spoke about, what I think all of these companies do is, what they have in common is they try and make traditional services quick to access, easy, and they make it intelligent. Like if you go through all of these different boxes, you'll find this theme threaded to all of them, right? Paying someone on Venmo is incredibly easy, as opposed to me pulling out my checkbook and writing the check, or going to my bank, setting up a payee account and sending them the money. Uber makes it easy. You don't have to own a car and pay insurance to get a ride, right? It also made the taxi experience delightful. Birchbox was intelligent about how they understood their audience. They figured out that women wanted to try products and they were not getting their products in the best way possible, so they fixed that. So we're going to explore these three concepts, but these companies, these challenger companies, primarily gained market share because they made it easy and quick for a customer to access them. And they did that in a really smart way. So either with a combination of lower prices or making it very user-centric, they were able to gain market share. And some of these companies obviously live on today and are massive in terms of size and structure. Folks like Birchbox, is not that big today and may not make it, but the idea and the concepts still remain for me. So we're going to explore these three concepts. Let's start with quick first, and let's look at what moving fast in a business context really means. So our fearless leader and CEO of Facebook has famously said this a few times, that if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you've released it too late. We're going to unpack a little bit about what this means, but let's take a use case of what releasing bad product means and how it impacts your business over the long term. So this is a picture of Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, touting the Amazon Fire Phone. How many people know that Amazon released a phone? Just raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anyone.
Because no one knows.
Exactly, because no one knows. This was arguably the largest kind of single most embarrassing failure that Amazon had. Like, no one really knew about the phone. It didn't work very well. It wasn't competitive in terms of price or features. The Silk browser that they had was just horrible compared to the existing browsers. I mean, it was a disaster. Now, I would argue that the Fire Phone was the most important product that Amazon ever released. It was their biggest hit. It was a blockbuster hit because what came out of the development of the phone was all of these things. They figured out how to build screens, high quality, high clarity screens at scale. and they've got 90 million Kindle e-readers now. They're the single largest provider of e-readers. They were able to take the processor from the phone that they built, the GPU inside the phone, and turn it into a Fire TV device that's like a set-top box that you can just connect to your TV and you can stream content. They had a voice assistant on the phone. It wasn't called Alexa then, but the voice assistant became the baseline for Alexa. And Amazon today owns 73% of the smart speaker market. Alexa is by far the leading voice assistant. And they've got 100 million devices outside their own devices that are Alexa compliant. So the point to kind of note here is that if you view this just within the context of the phone itself, yes, it failed, but the learnings that came out of it fueled an entire business line or multiple business lines for Amazon. So failing within the context of a single product is less important. It's about what you do with that failure and how you recover from it. That's even more important. And had they kind of not released the phone, or it was dead on arrival, or they said, you know what, this is so bad, we're not even going to make it, they arguably would have never gotten to the Kindle business. They would have never built a Fire TV. They would have never had Alexa. And so the cost of that phone failing has paid itself off in spades, right? So that's the point to make here. The second kind of concept here that is really interesting is the concept of supportive ecosystems. So this is the latest iPhone, right? And it obviously looks great. It's really expensive. It takes amazing pictures. But let's say that all of these apps, and you're going to all have a version of some of these apps on your smartphone, and whatever phone you use, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or yet another third-party phone. Think about your phone without any of the apps on them. Let's say you have the phone and it can make phone calls. Let's say it could take pictures, and it connects to the internet to a browser, perhaps, right? And play some music. How useful would that phone be without these apps? Somewhat useful, probably replaces your landline at home, but it is no longer the single device that you are tethered to the entire day. You would not be able to get your emails, speak to your friends and family, message, listen to music, make notes, get on Zoom, answer Menti questions online. You would not be able to do any of those things. And in my argument, the App Store is by far the more important innovation for Apple than the phone itself. And you can see that in their numbers. So the iPhone business, while absolutely massive, it's a $100 billion business, it dropped 5% from the last year, right? And this is not COVID year. This is 2018 to 2019. We're all gonna erase 2020 from our collective memories here. But on the other hand, the App Store grew 25% in revenue. It is now almost half as big as the iPhone business that they have. So from a dollar-to-dollar basis, the App Store, where Apple does not have to set up massive factories, buy expensive components and supplies, put them in boxes, ship them to customers, take returns, provide insurance. They don't have to do any of those things. There is no cost associated, almost no cost associated to running the App Store. So the App Store is by far a bigger and more profitable business, but more importantly, it's the App Store that makes the system, the iPhone ecosystem, really valuable. So this is how I think about agile product development within the context of an ecosystem. So I think the first takeaway here in terms of moving quick is you want to create, or you want to foster this mindset of rapid prototyping and taking continuous market feedback. And that is at the core of what you control. So this is what you as a company can do. And that gets a small flywheel going, right? So you kind of prototype, build products that are not ready yet, you ship them, you get feedback, you make it better, you iterate on it. But then you can accelerate that flywheel by engaging or building a supportive ecosystem around it. And that makes your flywheel bigger and allows you to move faster. So not only are you now making your product development agile, you're also taking on the momentum of a broader ecosystem that drives your company's success. So I'll stop here for a second. This is kind of the first section. If you have any questions, any thoughts, would love to kind of answer them and debate this a little bit.
I think it's a very good. The only thing is how to think of creating this ecosystem that relates to the product that we are putting on the market currently. So it's all about the idea and supporting this idea with whatever investment that we are looking after.
Yep. I would add to that and say, I think it's about a lot of companies, when you think about moving quick, the largest impediment to moving quick is the desire for companies to do things perfectly and with 100% control. People want to make sure that they can make the best phone ever and they can control every single aspect of the phone. And I think when you think about agile product development and you think about building an ecosystem, I think both of those go out the door. I think there's a bit of a leap of faith that happens there where you say, look, I believe that if I bring my partners along, they will create value for my customers. I don't know exactly what that means today, but let me get out there, have a few conversations with partners, bring up ideas of how they could leverage us. And I might lose some control. I may no longer be the person that directly is associated with my customer as I think about it. But as long as my customer is happy with that partnership, I'm okay ceding that control. So I think moving quickly is there's definitely the idea component about how do you figure out exactly what your partners want, but there's also a component about, it's not about what I want or my partner wants, what does the customer want? And if I can build an ecosystem around the customer, I think you will find that the ideas will come more quickly. I would argue that the folks in this room understand the customer base the best. You have a very good read on what makes your customers most happy. And I think trying to build an ecosystem around that need is ultimately what will get you the best or the highest quality ideas. Okay, cool. Again, feel free to stop me at any time. You don't have to wait for a formal break like this, but let's get to easy. and what easy actually means within the context of both agile leadership, but also digital transformation, which I think is probably more applicable here. So I want to start with a story about this young lady, Virginia Apgar. For those of you, she's not a very popular figure, so a lot of people will not know who she is, but we have much to owe her. So here's some stats and some somewhat sobering stats. So child mortality, which is death of newborn babies as soon as they're born in the US in 1933, was 1 out of 30 children died at childbirth, which is a dramatically high number. Like just to set context, today that number is dramatically lower. And just to give you also context, 1933 was, we were not as advanced in medical technology as we are today, but we were pretty good. We were able to solve a variety of diseases that had ailed humankind for hundreds of years. We had invented antibiotics and penicillin, and we had made a lot of progress. But the problem that the doctors were finding it hard here is that they didn't know how to save more children at childbirth. And Virginia Apgar came up with what's called an Apgar score. And an APGAR score is basically 5 things. And it basically measures 5 aspects of a child as soon as they're born: skin color, breathing, crying, limbs moving, and heart rate being over 100. And I'm fairly certain that this is a global measurement system. It may not be called APGAR score. It certainly is called an APGAR score in the US. But every medical institution globally uses the exact same methodology to measure a newborn child's health as soon as they're born. After I learned about this, I actually went back and pulled up my daughter's medical records, and sure enough, I found that she had an APGAR score of 9. Apparently, her limbs moving got a 1 out of 2, and everything else was okay. So anything over an 8 is considered fine. Anything under a 6 would lead you to have the child be admitted, and then they would diagnose what exactly was going on with the child. And the point to make here is that after the score was introduced, 20 years after this 1933 statistic that I have, 3 years after the APGAR score were introduced, the child mortality rate went from 1 out of 30 to 1 out of 500. Now, there's an obvious question here. The APGAR score doesn't actually tell you how to solve the problem, how to treat the child. What it did here, the magic here, is that it helped the doctors understand which children needed medical attention. It was impossible for them to figure out as soon as a child came out whether this child is good and ready to go home with their parents, or the child needs to be admitted and needs additional medical care. And the point that I want to make here is that the measurement aspect of a problem, being able to measure something, is just as important as the solution that you have to the problem. Which is to say, when you know what the problem is, you will find that you are much better suited to solve it than if you did not know when the problem or what the problem actually was. So measurement of all kinds of things in a business becomes incredibly important. And while things at the surface might look really good, a child coming out with pink skin and breathing fine might be, yeah, this child's fine. But if the heart rate's under 100, you may have a undetected problem that could lead to childbirth. The same way, an undetected metric that is not doing well within your business might indicate a severe problem that you're just overlooking. So the point to make here is that measurement in and of itself is, while not being a solution, is a very good indicator of success or failure in some cases. So let's come back to the measurement concept in a bit. I want to talk about, I want to kind of go back to the concept of easy for a second. So I'm assuming that everybody has Uber or a version of Uber where they live. Is that a fair statement? Does anyone not have a rideshare company where they're from? Okay.
It's fair.
Right, exactly, right. And when you think about, and I'll give you my personal experience here, is I absolutely hated my local taxi company. It was a disgusting experience, and I think I'm being a bit generous here, but it was the cars were old and relatively unclean for the most part. They were, almost every single time not on time. There's at least one time I can remember where I've missed a flight because my car just didn't show up. The most stressful experience for me was waking up in the morning for a flight, not knowing whether my taxi was going to be here in time or not. And what Uber offered was just fundamentally felt magical at the time. Like, I just go onto this app, I tell them where I want to go, and I hit play, and 15 minutes later, there's a car, perfectly clean car with a great, man or lady driving it, who is very courteous and is prompt and is taking me to my destination, and by all accounts seems very happy doing it. I mean, it seemed magical. And while that user experience for me was amazing, and that's the reason that I got onto Uber, right, or Lyft, or any of the rideshare services offered this kind of easiness. They made it very easy for the customer. The real magic of Uber actually comes in a slightly different way. So if you look at the business proposition for Uber, if you try to look at how Uber approaches its business, every business. So for example, the taxi company that I don't like, it's called Verdo Taxi. They've got 1 star on Google if you want to go look them up. But Verdo Taxi has to advertise on Google. They've got to advertise by sending me flyers, and they spend all of this advertising money to get to me, a user of their service. And when they do that, after spending all that money, they probably get my business sometimes from going from home to the airport and back, right? That's what they do. Now, let's say I get on that plane and I land in New York City, and I get off in New York City. There's an entirely different set of companies. The Verdo Taxi of New York City now has to advertise to me. They've got to have yellow cabs lining up at the door. Or if I want a limo service, they've got to advertise to me to find me in New York. And what they get in return is an occasional trip when I'm visiting from the hotel to the airport. Uber, on the other hand, has to acquire me once. When I have the app on my phone, they have spent some quantum of money to acquire me and get that app on my phone. But once they do that, they have got me going from home to the airport. But more importantly, when I get off in New York City, they have gotten a new rider in New York City without having to acquire that rider at all. I just flip my phone on and they've got a new user. I land in London, I turn my phone on, they've got a new user. I land in any city, anywhere in the world where Uber operates, and I've got a new user. So what they've really done is they've changed their user acquisition. While they've made it easy for me, they've made it easy for themselves by not having to acquire the same customer multiple times. They can do it once. They make sure that the user experience is great. And every single time I get off in a new city, I open up my phone. If I don't find an Uber, I'm quite disappointed. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Now I've got to go and do this taxi thing. That's the kind of loyalty that you get, that you breed in your audience when you make it easy for the customer. But more importantly, there's real tangible business benefits when you're able to make it easy for yourself as a company to acquire customers in multiple places without spending a lot of money. So that was a lot of easy for the customer, somewhat easy for you as a company. But let's look at some strategies that make it easy for you. And I've kind of laid this out as an investment strategy plan. When a lot of people think about strategic investments, they think about it within the context of acquiring or investing in a company. There's also really interesting ways to think about investment strategies by divesting work that you do or partnering with companies. And we'll look at some of my favorite examples. And I think someone on the call said this. I wasn't able to flip through my tiles real quickly enough to catch it. But when we were talking about Sephora and Birchbox, someone brought up augmented reality, being able to try out products virtually. And that is exactly what. So Ulta is a cosmetics firm in the US, retail, and they acquired a company called Glam Street. And what Glam Street does is it basically allows anyone, men or women, to fire up their phone, select a product, and hold the phone up to their face, and they can see that product on their face. So they're using augmented reality to replicate the experience of being able to be in the store. Now, obviously, during COVID, this is essential. But this was done. This acquisition happens about 3 years ago. So this concept of making it easier for their customers and acquiring companies to make it easier for their customer to do this has always existed. So this for me feels like a very classic example of an acquisition. You want to do something for your customer, you acquire a company that does that really well, right? Now, this is a slightly different example. So you've got Lowe's and you've got Boomerang Commerce that was acquired by Lowe's. So for those of you that don't know, Lowe's is like a Home Depot. It's a home improvement company. They sell goods that you basically use to either build a home or repair a home, or you get paint and a whole bunch of other stuff. And they acquired a company called Boomerang Commerce, which is like an analytics company. They are a statistical analysis tool, and seemingly completely unrelated to their user experience. Like it doesn't make any obvious sense why a home improvement company would buy an analytics company. But here's the most compelling data point that I found for this. Boomerang Commerce can look through millions and billions of customer records and purchase information and come up with insights. And here's one of my favorite insights. What they found is when a customer buys a measuring tape, in the following 90 days, they usually make purchases between $500 to $1,000. Now, when I put it within that context, it makes obvious sense. When you go to the store and you're buying a measuring tape, you're starting a project. You're doing something, you're measuring something, you're embarking on a new project. So obviously 90 days from then, you're going to buy a bunch of stuff. Now, the way that Lowe's uses this insight is the minute you buy a measuring tape, they are all over you. They are sending you coupons, they are calling you up, they are sending you emails about all of the stuff that's on sale. They're trying to figure out how they can help you and how to make your experience better. Now, they could not do that for all of their customers because they have no idea whether they're actually interested in buying something from them or not. Or maybe I'm just, going up to buy a pack of nails because I want to hang a picture on my wall, and that's it. That could be the end of it. But if I buy a measuring tape, something changes with how they orient themselves to their customers. So this is a really good example of acquiring a company that is well outside your core user experience, your core company infrastructure, and how that helps what your company's core business is how to make your users more successful, how to make sure that they buy more from you. So on the investment side, there's a couple of examples, and I'll kind of talk about the one on the right first because I think it's really interesting. So Kroger is a grocery chain. So they are a company that sells fresh produce, and there was a company in the UK called Ocado, which was basically doing the same thing but online. They were selling fresh groceries online. I mean, now we find it obvious. That's how we all, many of us buy our groceries today, is you go onto, Amazon or Safeway or Whole Foods or whichever your closest grocery store is, and you try and place an online order. And the initial sentiment by the street was that, oh, Kroger is looking to get in the online business. But here's the interesting investment. And by the way, they didn't acquire Ocado. They made a majority investment in Ocado. And the reason that they didn't acquire them and the reason they made the investment is as follows. So they were really not interested. Kroger was not interested in the online supermarket business that Ocado was running. What they found in their due diligence was that Ocado had built this really cool technology that automated warehouse picking. So they were able to assemble a basket of an online order in a purely automated way. And by investing in them, what Kroger did was license that technology from Ocado and they built 20 automated warehouses in the US in 2019 alone. Now, the reason I think this is important is when you're looking at an acquisition or an investment, I think it's easy to see the obvious benefit of partnering with someone. Online ordering seems like an obvious extension of what most companies would want to do, whether it's COVID or not. There's clearly a trend towards people being more kind of e-commerce minded when it comes to purchases. But being able to see beyond the basic model of a company, which is online shopping in the case of Ocado, and look at the capability behind it, and then using that capability to improve your own operations is where I think you can actually get more value. So what they ended up doing by investing in Ocado as opposed to buying them out is they didn't end up paying for the part of the business that they didn't care about. They didn't care about their online shopping activity. They were doing fine. They didn't need help with that. What they really wanted was to get access to the automated warehouse technology that Ocado had built. So you have to look at investment targets with more than one lens in mind, right? Here's another good one when you think about, are people mostly familiar with these brands here at the bottom? Lee, Wrangler, they're kind of relatively popular old school jeans companies. And on the right-hand side, you've got Vans, North Face, and Timberland, which are like what the cool kids are wearing these days. Like these are the high growth, millennial friendly brands. And they're all owned by this one company called VF Brands, which is the little circle in the middle, right? Now, VF Brands owns all of these different brands. And what their CEO found, and they got a new CEO a few years ago, and what he found was, I've got two types of brands here. I've got Lee and Wrangler on one side that is slow growing, very low margin, very dependable. It's a great brand. It has a very loyal following. They're not seeing massive increases in revenue. They're not seeing massive increases in growth. It is highly discounted for the most part. And on the other hand, he's got this set of other brands like Vans and North Face and Timberland that aren't a growth streak. They are red hot. People are buying them off the shelves, very low discounting, very high-end retailing. And so what VF Brands basically did was they said, we're going to divest Lee and Wrangler. And the reason this is interesting, like on the face of it, VF Brands would seem like, well, you're giving up a perfectly good business. There's nothing wrong with Lee and Wrangler. You're producing high quality jeans. You're making a good margin. You're running the company fine. The reason that they divested was, and this is the part that I found most striking about the CEO statement, is Vans, North Face, and Timberland had a different high growth, young millennial culture that he wanted to embrace as a company. And what was holding them back was these other two brands that were completely at odds with these newer brands. So instead of trying to get, I mean, the obvious thing here would be to say, let's get Lee and Wrangler to be more popular among teens. That's never going to happen. People have moved on. The brand has its value and it resonates with a certain audience. And if you continue to hold on to those brands within the context, you would find that you would have that culture of an old school brand percolate to some of the newer brands, right? So divesting is not just about divesting businesses that are not going well. Bold, agile leaders will routinely divest businesses that don't align with their culture. Here are some really interesting partnerships that I like. And the great things about partnerships is that you don't have to spend any money. You don't have to acquire companies. You don't have to integrate them. You don't have to invest. You don't have to spend a single dime, so to speak, right? But they can produce outsized value, right? So let's just go from the bottom here. So we were talking about Lowe's. Home Depot is another company like Lowe's that basically sells everything from furniture to tiles and remaking your kitchen. They had a partnership with Pinterest, which is a social media company, which I'm sure many of you know. And what they were able to do is, when there was a picture taken of, let's say, a remodeled bathroom or a remodeled kitchen, and someone wanted to or was interested in that look and they wanted to buy it, they would click the shop the look button, which would instantly take them from that Pinterest picture to a Home Depot shopping cart that was pre-populated with all of the things you would need to build that exact same kitchen in your home, or that exact same bathroom in your home. So it would identify the fittings, it would identify the specific tile that was being used, the paint. Now, obviously, you'd have to buy a whole bunch of other stuff to make it happen, but all of the things that a customer usually purchased, as opposed to someone who's actually doing the work in your home, would magically appear in your cart. That's an example of a really great partnership. What Home Depot understood, the key insight here is they went to where their customers were. They realized that people are not coming to Home Depot to shop for looks. Like, that's not what they come there for. They go to Pinterest and other social media shops to get inspiration. They wanted to make sure that once they were inspired, how do they turn that inspiration to a reality? That's Home Depot. That's me. So let me go strike a partnership with them. Crate and Barrel is another really interesting one. Crate and Barrel is a furniture store in the US. And anytime someone bought furniture for more than $2,000, they would throw in moving services for free, because they found that 9 out of 10 customers that bought more than $2,000 of furniture from them was usually moving into a new home. And so while it cost them a couple of $100s, the fact that Crate and Barrel, a furniture company, was helping them with their move, increased the average basket size. So people went from buying just 1 or 2 pieces of furniture at Crate and Barrel. The average basket size 5x'd, went from 2,000 to 10,000. People were more likely to buy more furniture from Crate and Barrel simply because they were offering a moving service. And so they partnered with Dolly to be able to do that. So these are, I guess, like, the point I'm trying to make with the slide here is that when you think about investment strategy, don't just think about acquisition or minority or majority investments. Think about how you can invest in these partnerships, how you can think smartly about divestment, how you can make it easier for you as a company to get to what you want. Acquisition might be the right way, and it might be the easiest thing for you to do, but there are far more easier things on the right that you can do that make it easy for you to get what you want, and you can reach your customers where they are. So kind of tying all of this into the easy bucket here is that measurement, in my opinion, is the key to making things easier. It helps you understand your customer, it helps you make better decisions, and it helps you improve efficiency. So you know what you need to do, you're able to do those things, and then you're able to measure if, did that decision that I made about understanding my customer, did it make my life and the customer's life easier? So I'll stop here for any questions before we get to intelligent.
So, Vijay, maybe a quick point, right? So we're talking about sort of a very big decisions where we're trying to acquire the companies or partner with the companies. But when it starts with the management, right? When it starts with the people who are just trying to explore, what do you think is sort of the methodology of trying to find what would be the best course of action, or maybe what company to acquire, or how do you actually start, not maybe from the C level, but just one level above? How do you actually look into the opportunities? How do you actually implement this agile methodology, looking at all those examples, but in your organization when you don't have a couple $1 billion to acquire some company?
Yep. I have to come back to measurement, right? I think measuring things that are within your control allows companies to uncover problems that they previously have never known. So I think I would start any kind of strategy discussion, and I'm being very broad here, like, to your point, if you don't have the ability to spend vast amounts of money and you're trying to come up with a new product or customer strategy, infusing that discussion with as much data as you can about what your company is good at today and what you're not good at today is very informative. It really removes the veneer off the top so you can really understand what the ground reality is. You'll get a very good sense of where the imperfections lie in the business. That then allows you to get to the next level of decision making, which is, A, is this a problem that I want to solve? And maybe I'm happy to live with this problem. And two, what's the easiest way for me to solve this problem? Right? Do I need to go full hog and buy a company, which I may not be able to do? Great. If I can't do that, what partnership opportunities, what other lower calorie investment opportunities could I potentially explore? Cool. All right. So moving on, and we'll save a few minutes at the end for kind of general open Q&A as well. This is the reason I put this up is it's a really cool picture. This is the the Tesla vehicle, and when I say the word Tesla, something like this usually comes to mind, right? It's a car company that makes very cool cars. They've got the Tesla S, they've got the 3, they've got the X. They're coming out with new models. It's a car company. That's the brand that we think about. So when you think about Tesla, you think about buying a car, but this is really where the magic happens in Tesla. Like if you think about the concept of intelligence, like if Tesla was just another battery powered car company, there's many of those. Nissan has one and Audi's coming out with a few, but the reason people are so excited about Tesla is because they hold the patents and they have the most experience when it comes to being able to make cars fully self-driving, right? So there's a pretty significant investment in addition to building a car, which is not insignificant, obviously, but in addition to building the car, they're investing a lot in self-driving technology. Now, this is about making their car more intelligent. Now, where the intelligent part really comes to play for me is here. Tesla for me is not a car company. Tesla for me is a platform company. And when I say platform, what I really mean is that they've taken learnings from building the car and they've expanded that into so many different offerings. So if you go from left to right here, the first thing is a Tesla Powerwall, which basically is a really large battery, basically, but a very powerful battery that you install in your home that can draw electricity from the solar panels that they produce. So you can make your home energy independent. You would not, you would theoretically not need a third-party utility to provide you, right? So they've used the same technology that they had in building the car to building a battery. And then they went on to build an even bigger battery. So the third picture here is a battery substation in Queensland, Australia, that powers an entire city, right? So what the best way to think about this is that once Tesla figured out battery technology and they figured out using the car, they said, okay, if we can power a car, what do we need to do to power a home? And then they figured that out. And they said, once we figured out a home, what would it take for us to figure out to power a city, right? So there is this exponential growth, and each of those steps makes does two things. One is it expands the markets that they can play in, right? So they're not just selling cars, they're not selling power walls, and they're selling substations, but it also makes the entire platform better. So when you've figured out how to power an entire city, the ability for you to power a car becomes somewhat trivial. So all of the learnings that you get across this entire platform stack, you can reapply to be able to make the entire chain, the entire battery platform, if you will, better for everybody, right? Here's another aspect of being intelligent and using AI, and I don't want to mistake the aspect of intelligence with just artificial intelligence. The first example there is very little artificial intelligence in what Tesla does. That is purely about being smart and being intelligent about using technology, but transforming the business that you're in with that technology. So not only are they transforming regular gas-powered vehicles to electric-powered vehicles, but they're also transforming the concept of self-driving cars with human-driven cars, right? So that's the second intelligent disruption. This is more specific to AI, where we have now reached the ability for an AI system to be able to have a higher, and what the use criteria here means, by the way, is that 62 out of 100 times the system is able to detect anomalies in X-rays and MRIs more effectively than a human radiologist, right? So here's how I'll kind of stop. And I know that Clemson was talking about some of this before we started, so you might have an opinion here. But we had Air Force Colonel John Boyd, this is something that really resonates with me, and I think it makes a lot of sense for like business leaders. He who can handle the quickest rate of change survives, and this is the model that Air Force pilots use, and they call it OODA for short, or Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And when you think about flying a plane, and I'm not talking about the commercial jet, I'm talking about when you're in a high performance combat situation and you have to make dramatically important decisions in an incredibly short period of times. There's actually a system that they teach pilots on how to do that. And my takeaway is that I found this to be incredibly useful for me as a business person and for leaders in the business space to use this model to make business decisions. So let's just go through this really quickly. So you've got to continually observe the landscape. And this does not mean passive observation. It's not just reading papers or reading news articles. It's about really observing what's happening around you, being very thoughtful and careful about understanding these small changes. There might be a little tweak in a business model by a small company somewhere, and all of a sudden your Walmart and Amazon is towering above you 8 years later, right? Like that's what observing means. It's about really understanding the landscape around you. The minute you observe something that is either concerning or worth responding to, you've got to orient yourself, right? So this does not necessarily mean reacting. Orienting means you are making small but important changes to your organization to fit the new circumstance. And that might mean, making small investment decisions, making some hiring decisions, making some divestment decisions, but you're orienting yourself. Then you have to actually decide how you want to respond and why you want to respond. And then once you've observed, oriented, and decided how you want to respond, you have to act very quickly, right? And in my observation, in my conversation with a lot of leaders, I find that people are very good, kind of bottom down. Like, people tend to act relatively quickly. They are very good at making good decisions. They tend to orient themselves well. I think where most leaders will self-admit that they have lacked is the ability to continually observe the landscape. It is those small changes that you have to observe early on that make the orientation more true, makes a decision better, and allows you to act really quickly. So I'll kind of stop with that, and we can jump to any questions that you might have either about the deck or otherwise. So I'll kind of go off of screen share.
I have a quick question, please.
Yes.
I think when you were showing it earlier in the presentation, there were three things, right? It was easy, intelligent, and I think there was a third
Quick.
pillar, right? Or quick. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand measurement. You mean by measurement, it's the normal gathering data and making analysis on the data, on the behavior of whatever the customers thinks. This is what you mean by measurement, more or less?
Yeah, I think in normal business context, I would encourage you to think about measurement as you obviously measure, every company measures a number of variables about its customers and retention and acquisition costs and all of those things, right? That's how you run your business. For me, the insight here is you need to start measuring things that you previously did not measure, especially when you thought things were going well, or especially when you think that you don't understand why a problem is being caused. So additional measurement, whether it's actually sensitizing data, it's running surveys, it's talking to more customers, it's integrating a new system in to measure. I think measurement for me comes down to, like, if you were to take a problem that you have, there will be some very obvious solutions to that problem. And the reason it might still be a problem is because you can't solve them with those obvious solutions. So for example, I think, someone said, you don't have $2 billion to go make an acquisition to solve that problem. That would be an obvious solution to that problem. You cannot do that. How do you figure out what are the elements or the components of that problem? And I think measurement can help you understand what those are. And sometimes measurement can simply tell you or validate something that you're unable to validate that you already knew. Right. And I think both of those are important within a business context, because you need evidence to be able to make an investment case. You need to be able to prove that you understand that doing something is going to result in a better outcome. And that may not always be obvious. And that's where, for me, measurement becomes really important.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one refers back to the quote you mentioned by Market, which is if you're producing a new product and you're not embarrassed of its status at the beginning, so you're too late to release and so on. Because I usually face this challenge with the business team. I work in the technology side. For example, when they think of a new product, they think it in the traditional way, though we moved and transformed it into the agile approach. However, they are still thinking how to release the product once it's fully complete. And to take an example, we launched recently rate tariffs. Vodafone is very popular with it's a very popular tariff rate plans in Vodafone worldwide. Yeah. So the revamped portfolio of tariffs, it was huge. We spent around 8 months working over it. And usually, every time I tell them, let's release it to the customers with basic features, and then we increment by time. Yeah. They usually say that if we do this, we're gonna lose the market. The competitors will react, and it will not succeed as they see releasing it as a whole.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the best approach here?
Yeah, I think, the way that I think about these things is when you release something early, you're doing it because it is something that you believe is very cool and does not exist in the market today. And when you do that, what you will find is your customers will make the excuses for you. They will defend you, and they will defend your bad product, because they see the vision, they see where you're going. And so, like I would say that in the US, video calling became really popular, I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And WhatsApp was arguably somewhat early to the game, but not by much. And they'd been offering audio calling for some time, and it was kind of crappy, but they had a long way to go. And I remember being at Facebook and hearing a lot of the internal conversations around WhatsApp's video calling features. And we were far behind most other companies when it came to audio calling. Skype at the time had the best audio calling capability. So there was a choice that had to be made. We either spent another 6 months improving our audio calling to make it the best audio calling product, because at the time WhatsApp would drop a lot, or you launch video calling and you fix audio calling later, right? It was a Boolean choice. We just only had so many engineers and there's only so much we can do. And I think the choice to release video calling was a bold one, because customers were like so excited that they could now video call on WhatsApp for free, and it was pretty good. It wasn't great. It was just as bad as the audio, but they made excuses for us. They would tell people, "Oh no, it's going to get better." We ran surveys about customer sentiment, and people were more optimistic that video calling would get better faster than our own internal estimates. So that's a really good example of you want to move fast in order to, yes, losing market share is a very valid concern. If you release a bad product and your customers don't believe that you're going to do a good job at it, I think that's a real problem. So I don't think you want to minimize that. But I do think you want to create an environment where your customers will make excuses for you, where they are so excited about using whatever it is that you want to release that they'll be like, sure, it's fine. I'm sure they're going to fix it. I'm sure Vodafone is going to fix this problem for me. But until then, I'm happy to wait, right? That's the excitement that you want to get to. And I think being open about that is also an equally important part. You want to make sure that you don't sell this as it's perfect. You want to sell this as, we build something interesting. What do you think? Right? And that helps you bring your customers closer to you. You're being vulnerable. You're saying, I'm not perfect. This is not the best video calling solution out there, but hey, we think it's kind of cool. What do you think? Right? And you want to draw your customers into that.
Okay, great.
May I have a question, please?
Sure.
Do you think that Tesla is a successful company? You already gave an example about Tesla. So do you think that Tesla will continue competing in the market? Tesla is competing with a lot of tycoons, let's say Toyota as an example, Ford, Mercedes, BMW, and it's not giving a differentiated service, especially that from my point of view. I'm just asking a question. The price of Tesla is too much comparing to the prices of the other models or other cars in the market, especially that the prices of the fuel is already decreased a lot comparing to the other systems. The other companies like Toyota and Ford, they already go to the hybrid models. So do you think that Tesla will be able to compete, or Tesla will be like the same as the example that you already gave, which is the video call? The video call is something excited in the market when it's already launched 5 or 6 years ago. However, I think that there is few persons are already using the video call.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, first of all, and this is true for most of the world, but certainly in the US, stock prices have completely lost contact with reality. So, I don't think that you can no longer use a company's stock price to measure its health. That is unfortunately too rational for our times. So, you have to separate the exuberance in the market, in the stock markets, from what's actually happening in the company.
Yeah, separate the market and the company, because it's two different beasts right now.
Exactly, I'm not an economist, and even if I would, I don't think I'd understand why. But I think the better way to think about Tesla is you're absolutely right. I think there's another reason why I would be concerned about Tesla. Tesla is cool. It's an electric car company, and they're building some really fascinating products, I'm sure. But when you think about the brands that they're going to compete with, you think about German automotive companies, Japanese automotive companies, which continue to retain a majority market share in the U.S. and Europe and places around the world. They have invested in marketing to their core audiences for decades. Like when you think about reliable car brands, Tesla is not in the top 5 or even the top 10. When you ask for cool cars, Tesla's probably number 1. And so I think once all of these other companies, and they will make the shift to electric drivetrains, I think you will find that there will be a real comparison that will happen where, do I want to, for expensive luxury cars, especially like the ones that Tesla is selling north of 50 and 60,000 US dollars, it is as much of a status symbol as it is a utility, right? And so I think you're going to find people question themselves, like, do I want electric Porsche? Well, it'll all be electric at that point. Do I want a Porsche or do I want a Tesla? And I think that's when the real competition would start. So I think they have a first mover advantage today, which I think they're exploiting. I think what they're doing smartly here is 2 things. I think they understand this better than we do. And that's the reason they are spending more R&D on making better batteries. They're spending more R&D on self-driving capabilities than improving the core car experience. Because I think over the long term, they believe that their competitive advantage will not come from having Tesla as a car brand, but having the best-in-class batteries and the best-in-class self-driving technology. And when they have those things, the car brand in and of itself becomes irrelevant, right? It's like, Mitsubishi is a great example of a company that makes cars. They are, top 15, top 20 car maker, but Mitsubishi Cars makes less than 3% of Mitsubishi conglomerate. They basically produce steel, and they have harbors, and they run freight ships, and they build like large turnkey projects. Like that's kind of what they do. And I think about Tesla in the same context. They'll probably grow up to being more of a self-driving infrastructure company that has the best-in-class rechargeable batteries, and that technology will be the moat that they have and not the Tesla car brand.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one.
Sure.
It's a bit of thought of what we have been through today, and as a learnings, in a simple way, of what we have discussed today, how to take the learnings from today and try to implement it in the Vodafone world, because I believe the majority of the examples that we have mentioned today, it's completely different industries than the one we are at currently. In just a simple way, as a piece of advice, as a conclusion of today's learning, what do you advise exactly on what we need to take out of today and try to implement it in our world, like the telco world or the Vodafone world?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to approach this. I think you want to understand that there are 3 vectors, and what I can do is I can when I share my slides back with the group, I'll add in a little roadmap, a little framework that I recommend companies to use. But I kind of think of there being 3 questions you want to ask yourself, right? I think there's user experience, right? You want to understand what user experience you are aspiring to. What does a Vodafone customer, the most happy Vodafone customer, look like? There's user experience, and you can call it a user experience strategy session. You come together, you define that, right? Then there is once you've got your user experience set up, then you have kind of a business capability. What business capabilities do you have today that you need to be able to satisfy these user requirements? And then the 3rd level down, further back end, is what are infrastructure requirements? What foundational requirements do you need to have in order to make that user experience happen? So I think answering those 3 questions and building a roadmap, and I'll send a slide where I have some of the questions listed out there, will help you construct a really clear understanding of the problem set in your mind. 2, it will expose the weaknesses in your current business capability And third, it will identify what foundational or infrastructural needs you need in order to make those happen. And one tactic that I've found to be very useful, and a lot of companies call them different things, I call it mission control, is to be able to find 2 or 3 people that are responsible and accountable. So you're not just the person that gets told that you're going to do this, but you give them real power and hold them accountable for some part of that work stream. The power is not in the people. The power is in you as leaders, enabling those people to be able to draw a line across all 3. What I've found in most companies is that user experience, business capability, and infrastructure tend to run completely separately, right? There's some strategy meetings, there's some kind of quarterly reviews, and people are like, yeah, we're going to do all of those things. And they go back to their desks and they're like, hey, that's our plan. And we're going to go ahead with that plan. If that plan happens to match somebody else's, great, thumbs up. If it doesn't, too bad, right? But I think trying to bring those 3 elements of a company together is where the magic happens, because then you're truly building infrastructure that enables your business to deliver a user outcome. That's the laddering up that I think is where you can move quickly, you can make things easy for your customer, and you can be smart about it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, please.
Sure.
I just wanted to know, why did the Facebook purchase or acquire WhatsApp?
I think, well, I mean, clearly in retrospect, it was a really good idea, but, kind of going back to the time when we actually acquired it, I think Mark, so if you look at the world today, right, 10 years ago, messaging was largely SMS, right? Messaging today has become so much more, right? Messaging today has become kind of foundational utility infrastructure. And I think Mark saw pretty early on that, we were never going to be a phone company. We were never going to be, an Android company. Like, we were never going to have an app store. Like, we are, at the end of the day, if you think about Facebook, we are just another app on a phone, right? Like, that's really what it is, right? We are quite vulnerable and exposed. So when you think about acquisitions like Oculus and WhatsApp, I think WhatsApp allowed us to get into a fundamentally different space, basically unconnected, cross-device, international messaging at very low cost or free. I think is a long-term trend that Mark bet on. So if you think about WeChat's probably the best example, where you basically have a single platform that does everything from, it's the Uber in China, it is the PayPal or Venmo in China, it is it's everything. You can do e-commerce, you can message, you can text, you can send money. Like, it is a holistic platform that enables a number of different services. I think if you think about WhatsApp within that context, you would see that there's a lot of these different applications that have yet to be built on that platform. But when you have a platform with a few billion people on it, I think it becomes very compelling. And I think that's one of the big rationales. And I think for Oculus, I think it's largely that we wanted to have more control over the ecosystem. So when the next generation of operating systems are built, they will be built on AR and VR. And Facebook, for a change, would then be the company that owns the platform as opposed to being an app on another platform.
Okay, thank you. I was just asking the question because I was actually thinking of, there isn't a new revenue stream that currently is, WhatsApp is for free, and there isn't currently any revenue that is going to be generated from the purchase right now. But after what you said, I can relate to, it's a long-term vision. Most probably something that will happen, especially that you have a couple of billion people using the app currently.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at most of the large, well-capitalized technology companies of our time, all of them offer their core products for free. Like, nobody pays for Google search, and if you do, you're doing something wrong. Nobody pays for Facebook. Nobody pays for Instagram. Nobody pays for Gmail. but somehow these companies make billions of dollars. So I think that there's a long-term vision of how do we satisfy a customer need, and what is the right trade-off that we are willing to tolerate, right? And I think for all of the examples I mentioned, it's advertising, but for something like WhatsApp, advertising is obviously not an option. No one's going to watch ads within a chat app. But I think there are other opportunities like payments and e-commerce that I think are really valuable. Like just as an example, I spent a lot of time with small customers, and we were at a panel where we were talking about this, and someone was saying, Instagram helps me discover my customers. I get them on, they follow me, then they like my products, they want to buy it. So you do all of the heavy lifting, Instagram, from finding customers and getting them to purchase. But once they're there, you drop the ball, because then I have to ask them to ping me on WhatsApp, and I share information, and then they send me a WeChat or a Venmo link to complete the purchase. And those are the opportunities that I think something like WhatsApp can help address. If we integrate that funnel to say, yes, we found your product, I want to buy it, and then you can seamlessly purchase that product using a secure channel like WhatsApp, I think it'll make the customer experience completely seamless.
And that's the strength of WeChat. I spend a lot of time in China, and it's amazing. Where I'm going to send you a video on YouTube that talks about WeChat and how it connects businesses. And the exciting part about this video, it says they never left the app. So everything from ordering a ride to paying for it to rating it to buying something new is all within WeChat. And they have some conditions that enabled that function to work within that region. And there are some conditions, I believe, within Egypt and within the Middle East that are very similar. And so we might want to take a look at that as an example of what Vijay has been sharing with us about quick, easy, intelligent. And when we look back to the Vodafone values that we talked about at the very beginning of today, and we talk about customer-centric, doing it quickly, failing early, customer-centric, you can see the connection between these two concepts. Vijay, we really want to thank you for your time today. I've taken 3 pages of notes. It looks like this, sorry. But it's been really fascinating because you've given us an easy to use, again, you've given us a model that is quick and easy and intelligent. And we certainly appreciate that. And thank you very much for your time today. Any last questions for Vijay?
Thank you so much. It was really amazing. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much, guys. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that we didn't have any technical issues, and I'm glad that you got the most out of this. And Clemson, Chris, really nice meeting you guys, and
You as well,
good luck
Vijay.
shepherding
Thank you
this
so much.
group. Take care.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Vijay.
Hope to see you again.
Because now we're going to take it and we're going to apply